All right, and our next story is about Turkey. Now, reports suggest that Russia has approached Turkey with a proposal to buy back the S-400 air defense systems it sold to Ankara in 2019. The reason? Inventory shortages and increasing demand from third countries. The story was first reported with Ankara open to the plan as it seeks to circumvent US sanctions. This even as Ankara has yet to officially confirm this. Ukrainian military news site Militarny said that there is positive attitude towards Moscow's offer as well among Turkish officials. The S-400, it's a long-range surface-to-air missile defense system which was developed by Russia. It can track and target aircraft, drones, missiles up to 400 kilometers away. Moscow has used it to strengthen its own air defenses, especially in areas bordering NATO countries. It is battle-tested and is considered one of the most advanced air defense platforms in the world. This request comes as Turkey, which is a NATO member, has been developing its own air defense system called the Steel Dome. This will reduce Turkey's reliance on Russian technology. Now, Russia appears to be in short supply of its own domestically made and supplied S-400s and is reportedly considering buying back these S-400 systems, which it sold to Turkey back in 2017. These were delivered in 2019 for $2.5 billion, following its unsuccessful attempts to buy US Patriot systems. Although Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced the systems would be fully operational by April 2020, Ankara still does not actively use them. They were never integrated into NATO. Their missiles are already halfway through their shelf life, and maintenance costs pose a burden for Ankara at this time. At that time, the deal had resulted in a spat with the US as well and saw Ankara being excluded from the F-35 program and the imposition of sanctions that followed. Now, at a time when NATO unity is being tested, getting rid of the S-400 would make it easier for Turkey to resume talks with the United States, and that's for the F-16 fighter jets, and to seek readmission into the F-35 program as well. So this is not the first time the fate of Turkey's S-400s has surfaced internationally. In 2023, the then Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu had said that the US has asked Ankara to send the S-400s to Ukraine, a proposal that Ankara strongly rejected. For Russia, the interest is simple. It is to replenish its own stockpile, with increasing Ukraine drone attacks as well as growing demand for these systems. It shouldn't come as a surprise that Russia would want it back at this point. All right, let's shift our focus. British politics, it's gripped by increasing tensions as Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces what could perhaps be the biggest internal challenge to his leadership to date. Amid a backdrop of public unrest, political scandals and sliding poll numbers, speculation is mounting that Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is preparing to make a bold move, one that could threaten Starmer's grip on power. Andy Burnham, who is an outspoken Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, widely tipped as a potential successor, and he's doing little to deny it as well. Andy Burnham is positioning himself as a rival now to Starmer. He's launched a new campaign group for taxes on accumulated wealth and assets, government ownership on utility companies, and removal of Britain's two-child benefit cap. Burnham is expected to openly criticize Starmer at the Labour Party's annual conference later this month. He has thrown his weight behind Lucy Powell, the former minister who was controversially sacked by Starmer in his latest reshuffle, who's now running for deputy leader. The timing? No coincidence. It comes just as Starmer prepares to unveil his government's so-called Phase 2 agenda. Not only this, in mere 1 year into the job, he has lost a huge chunk of public support. His approval ratings are down from 44% to 24%. The party is lagging behind Reform UK in recent polls, and now with discomfort growing within the Labour ranks. This internal turbulence follows a rough few weeks for Starmer. First came the shock resignation of Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, then the sacking of US Ambassador Peter Mandelson. Starmer is still facing intense scrutiny over his decision to appoint Mandelson as US Ambassador, despite leaked files revealing links to convicted late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Downing Street insists Starmer had no knowledge of those ties at the time of Mandelson's appointment, but the opposition benches and even some Labour MPs are not convinced. The fallout swift, brutal. Questions remain about what Starmer knew and also when. The scandal has rattled confidence in Starmer's judgment. It has raised serious concerns about the vetting process at the highest levels of the government. In an effort to regain control of the political narrative, the Prime Minister unveiled what is being described as a landmark nuclear partnership with the US. The new deal signed coincides with Donald Trump's high-profile visit to the UK and will fast-track approval for a new generation of small modular nuclear reactors, which aim to boost energy. This is for British energy independence and to drive billions into the economy. But critics are calling it damage control and not leadership. The pressure on Starmer is mounting from within his own ranks. Many Labour MPs are voicing growing concerns as well, warning that Starmer's position will be in serious jeopardy if he cannot show significant improvement by key local elections next May. Starmer's handling of immigration particularly, the rising number of boat crossings and his response to escalating street protests have drawn sharp criticism, not just from the public but increasingly, once again, from within his own ranks. Now, of course, this friction is ideological too. Starmer has worked hard to distance Labour from left-wing politics of Jeremy Corbyn, steering the party towards a more centrist, electable platform. But that strategy has come at a cost. Many within Labour, especially on the grassroots, see Starmer's vision as a betrayal of the party's core values. With Burnham's faction now gaining ground and Labour MPs openly speculating about a leadership contest, the Prime Minister's future is looking anything but secure. And guess what has made a comeback in Russia? Good old-fashioned barter trade. Well, we can't vouch for good, but old-fashioned for sure. Barter trade is back for the first time since the 1990s. So what's happening? Companies are swapping wheat for Chinese cars and flax seeds for building materials. Why? To circumvent sweeping Western sanctions. It's no secret that Russia has over the years developed a penchant for skirting Western sanctions. In fact, the Russian leadership has spoken of how they aren't scared of sanctions anymore since they're so used to operating under them. But barter for wheat and flax seeds? One can't deny that this does, to a certain degree anyway, reflect how deeply the Ukraine war has distorted the global trade for the world's biggest producers of natural resources. So 3 decades after the collapse of the Soviet Union and its economic integration with West, Russia is once again relying on alternative, hard-to-trace methods of exchange. The United States, Europe and allies have imposed over 25,000 sanctions on Moscow since its 2014 annexation of Crimea and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Under Trump's tariffs tirade, Washington has warned Chinese banks and, of course, has hit India with tariffs over the oil trade with Russia. We know this. While President Vladimir Putin claims the economy has weathered the storm, outpacing G7 growth in recent years, the central bank does acknowledge it is technically in recession with inflation running high. One of the most punishing measures, Russia's exclusion from the SWIFT global payment system. It's made international banking almost impossible. Beijing's lenders, too, are wary of secondary sanctions. They're increasingly reluctant to handle Russian money. That has pushed trade partners towards barter transactions that require no financial transfers and are far harder to track. In 2024, Russia's economy ministry even issued a 14-page guide to foreign barter transactions, suggesting companies use barter platforms to bypass these sanctions. Since then, deals have multiplied. As per Reuters, at least 8 barter arrangements have been identified in recent months. This includes Chinese cars exchanged, as I mentioned earlier, for Russian wheat, flaxseed swapped for appliances, construction materials, and metals traded for machinery. A customs filing in the Urals region valued one flax deal at roughly $100,000. For many Russians, barter stirs memories of the chaotic 1990s when runaway inflation, shortages forced businesses into sprawling chains of goods-for-goods deals that distorted pricing and enriched opportunists. This time, however, barter arises not from a lack of money but from sanctions pressure and the risks of conventional banking. Analysts note that barter now extends beyond China. Deals have been reported with Pakistan and discreetly with firms importing Western goods into Russia despite sanctions. Other workarounds include using payment agents, cryptocurrencies. As per some experts, the growth of barter is a symptom of de-dollarization, sanctions pressure and liquidity problems. Now, be that as it may, does this move remind you of something else? The resurgence of barter in Russian trade bears a striking resemblance to the dynamics that triggered the Opium Wars. Under the Qing dynasty, Western nations, particularly Britain, faced a trade imbalance. Europe wanted Chinese tea, silk, porcelain, but China demanded payment only in silver, refusing to accept Western goods. So, to break this deadlock, Britain began illegally trading Indian opium into China, creating an informal barter system that bypassed official currency channels. While this method may not be the same, and it is not, the same old forces are at play. Whether Russia's turn to barter signals resilience or vulnerability remains to be seen. But if history is anything to go by, it would be safe to assume at this point that such strategies are often mere stopgaps that expose deeper fractures in a nation's economic foundation. Now, we turn our attention to Bangladesh, where the student wing of the Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami, Islami Chhatra Shibir, has now won elections in two of the country's most influential university campuses. The latest election win comes near Dhaka. Days earlier, Shibir swept the Dhaka University Central Students' Union polls. This reportedly marks the first time since 1971 that an Islamist student group has won elections in Dhaka University's powerful student body. But the development is not just about student politics. For New Delhi, this rise of Jamaat-e-Islami student wing signals a troubling shift in Bangladesh's political landscape. Remember, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government, the Awami League, had outlawed Shibir in August 2024, only days before Hasina was forced to exile by the student-led protests. The interim government quickly reversed the ban, opening the door for Shibir's electoral resurgence. These campus victories are unfolding at a crucial time against the backdrop of the February 2026 national election. Dhaka University polls have been seen as a political barometer. And now this tide appears to be turning for Jamaat's favor. Other universities and beyond are expected to head for elections soon as well, giving an opportunity for further strengthening their footprint. At the same time, the 8-party Islamist coalition is already charting a joint action plan for the general election announced by the chief advisor Muhammad Yunus last month. For India, the prospect of Jamaat gaining significant power in Dhaka could open the door to increased cross-border hostility. Experts warn of closer coordination with Pakistan's ISI and a surge in security threats along the border. So this could also impact Bangladesh's Hindu minority, because in the first few months following Hasina's forced exile, there were waves of violence and persecution against minorities. And this fresh rise raises fears of renewed targeting of Hindus. India now watches closely as Jamaat's resurgence could potentially transform campus victories into a broader political challenge with direct consequences for the region.